All right, true believers, welcome back to All of the Avengers. I am your host, Van Allen Plexico. This is going to be another of our solo efforts where I am going to cover Avengers issue number 12. And it seems kind of cool to reach issue number 12 because that means I know that it was bi-monthly for a while. And in fact, let me just take a quick sneak peek at, let's see, this is the January 1965 issue. And I'm looking to see, I should have thought of this before we started. I just not published monthly. Okay, so it is published monthly. So from this point, certainly from this point forward, maybe from a little bit earlier forward, we'll know how many months have gone by comics wise by what issue number we're on. But we've now done a year's worth if it were monthly the entire time. Okay. So issue number 12 from January of 1965. So it probably was written and put together and came out mid-late 64. And I've got several things I'm really interested to talk about this issue. But before I do, I have to, as always, thank our patrons who make this show possible. If you want to help, we don't do any commercials or any advertisements on this show. This is entirely produced free for you to watch, but we really appreciate those of you who contribute to making it continue to be produced and to continue to happen as part of the White Rocket Entertainment family. Go to www.avengersassemble.net, www.avengersassemble.net, and click on the button there. You also can find the all the previous episodes that have been released to the public are located there. Of course, if you become a patron, then you get early access to all of our shows, and you also get exclusive shows. Like we did an exclusive coverage of a Fantastic Four issue that crossed over with Hulk and the Submariner and the Avengers. And I posted the discussion that Perry Constantine and I had about Avengers Infinity War. And he and I have recently done the same thing for Avengers Endgame. So as soon as that one's available to us, I'll post our big, long review, very interesting, fun review that we did of Avengers Endgame. And there'll be a bunch more stuff coming. I'm working on a lot of things right now I have in mind. But in any case, we have to thank the folks who are already our patrons. They include Christopher Anastasia, MVP Captivating Kathy Bright, George Gaston, Ryan Daly, Earl Ricks, David Wright, and Emmanuel Seaman. Thank you all so very much for making this a commercial-free broadcast. All right. And I've had a few folks ask, by the way, if we do this as a podcast. I would do it as a podcast, except that I feel like what we're doing here is so visually oriented that it really wouldn't work as well as a podcast. So YouTube is the only place you'll be able to access all of the Avengers, whether it be on the YouTube site or through the Avengersassemble.net. All right, let's get into issue 12. Now, the first thing I got to say, looking at the cover of Avengers 12, is that we finally got, and it's kind of funny to say this considering that there are 2 boxes of text on the cover, but we finally got a somewhat restrained cover, right? We've been tracking this across the first 12 issues, and it seemed like for a while there, everybody on the cover had to say something in a word balloon, and there had to be multiple text boxes as well. But for this issue, man, I mean, that's just, I think that maybe this issue, the cover doesn't get the love it deserves, but this is a really good early Avengers cover. I mean, you've got Thor front and center with the hammer smashing and the Wasp tiny flying overhead. You've got a giant man, Pym, reaching out with a gigantic hand, and you got Iron Man back there and Captain America on the edges. Mole Man or not, I would totally buy a t-shirt that just had the Avengers part of this. And the logo, it seems like it's up so high and so small that they're able to get a big text box in here. This hostage Earth. And text. And then, of course, the usual, look how great this is. We talked about this in the last episode, that Stan writes the books and then he writes a blurb for the cover about how great the story is. as if somebody else wrote it. You know what I mean? It's like if I ended every show by saying, "Man, that all the Avengers episode was great. Whoever it is that does those is fantastic. This is the greatest milestone in comics commentary history." But it's just funny. You know what it does? It really does give it that Marvel flavor. DC rarely did anything like that. They didn't have the chutzpah that Stan had, to do that. So that's fine. It just gives it some of that Marvel flavor. All right, so we start out with our worldwide reception radio. We start out with Giant Man Pym in the lab on vacation. So I like that they're taking a day off from their Avengers duties to catch up on Hank's lab work, and they're in costume. I love that they're in costume. I never really noticed before how much Jan's outfit is kind of the opposite of Hank's, right? In other words, he's got red sleeves and red pants legs with blue boots, and she's got blue sleeves and blue pants legs with red boots. He's got a red mask. She's got a blue mask. The only difference is she kind of has like this tunic top that's red also, kind of like him, but her shorts part are red and his are blue. So he's kind of the opposite. I never really noticed that before. Anyway, so this is again written by Stan Lee. We've got Don Heck and Dick Ayers with good old Sam Rosen. And it's really kind of become. I'm fascinated by how quickly I feel like I've adjusted to this not being Jack Kirby, but being Don Heck and Dick Ayers. So I do plan to do some patron only, some additional patron only episodes coming up soon with Fantastic Four issues that cross over or involve these stories. And I'm curious to see how I react to Jack Kirby's art at the same time in history that we're seeing what Don Heck is doing, in late 64 here, early 65. So a lot of the beginning of this issue is predicated over the idea that Hank gets warnings from his aunts. And it's funny because we've been seeing the MCU movies for the last 14 years. And in them, it's always kind of taken for granted that, Scott talks to the ants, of course. There it is. Of course he does. He's Ant-Man. Why would he talk to the ants? And for a lot of the comics, it's that way. But this issue, for whatever reason, Stan kind of went off on this lark of everybody thinks it's stupid and silly that Hank gets his information, his warnings, his communications from ants. So Jan says something about it. She knows how serious it is, and she still says, I can't help feeling there's something ridiculous about having a heart-to-heart talk with some ants. So Jan has some reservations about the ants warning. Okay. And there's the ants going, oh no, and they're sending off the alarm. And so Hank is calling an Avengers emergency meeting. Aren't you embarrassed? What will you say when they come charging in that they're needed to stop a riot in some anthill? Jan is like totally in a mood about the ants here, and she's just the first. It's not going to just be her. I love she says, "Sure, mustn't keep the ants waiting," very sarcastically. I can just hear that. So Jan is still kind of being a pain in the butt at this early stage, and that's not Jan's fault. That's how Stan's writing her, I would say. All right, so we get the usual. Here comes the good guys. Whatever new menace confronts us shall not find Thor lacking. And I love that Iron Man has got the roller skates out, and we learn something new here. We learn that the wheels turning in his skates served as generators to keep his built-in batteries fully charged. And there's several moments in this. There's at least two more moments in this issue that Iron Man references, or that somebody references about Iron Man, his transistors or his batteries needing to be charged. He really had an issue with batteries back then. I mean, he needed to find a better way to store energy. But it is interesting because I think that's kind of how the alternator in your car works, right? Is that the battery cranks the car up, helps it start. But once you're moving, the alternator charges the battery. And so basically now that Iron Man is moving, his roller skate wheels charge his batteries. So I kind of like that. And then this shot, again, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 7-panel page. I mean, this is a pure Stan Lee 12 panels across a 2-page spread thing here with lots of different scenes and lots of conversation, tons and tons of text, footnotes and everything. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I've read Brian Michael Bendis comics that the entire issue didn't have as much going on in text as this one does on these 2 pages. Okay. But in this one little panel here, one of the smallest panels, you see Captain America leaping over rooftops. And he says, lucky I was nearby, just another few rooftops to hurdle and I'll be there. So for whatever reason, rather than like just jogging down the sidewalk or taking his motorcycle or whatever, he kind of like Spider-Man with the web swinging, Captain America of this era jumped from rooftop to rooftop. I guess that was just a New York City thing, right? I mean, I guess. But the thing that really stands out to me about this rendering by Don Heck of Cap here is this reminds me of an Alex Ross panel, maybe in Marvels, where I guess Phil Sheldon, the photographer, right? He takes a picture of Captain America leaping past, and it looks a lot like this. So I really do wonder if maybe this is where Alex Ross got the idea of having Captain America just traveling from point A to point B, and he's, dramatically leaping through the air as he goes, kind of like the Hulk leaping, or, or like I say, Spider-Man swinging. I guess that's kind of his trademark way of getting around New York City. All right, so here goes another. Like I said, there when Jan protests the ant warning, we are just getting started. So Hank starts to tell him about the frightened group of ants, and Iron Man says, "Boy, everybody's a comedian. Now tell us the real problem." "I am telling you." And now Thor just gets all bent out of shape about it. And then Ant-Man is like, "The ants have never sent a false alarm yet. Who knows what they may have unearthed." And we see a reference to Fantastic Four. I may have to. I can't tell if that's 22 or 27, but I'll find out easily enough. But that may be one that we want to do a patrons only side quest on. So I'll let you know if we do that. But again, here's Thor saying, "No, can't be Mole Man. He's already been defeated or whatever." And again, they bicker. Cap keeps kind of standing up for Hank a little bit, which is nice, but Thor gets bent out of shape and leaves. And Ant-Man is like, or Giant Man is like, "Fine, everybody else leave too." And they do. Meanwhile, at the Earth's core, the Mole Man is in full Doctor Doom megalomaniacal villain mode. "You faster, you mindless subterranean slaves, faster, my machine must be completed quickly. I hunger for revenge." Oh, I just love the way Stan writes the arch villains. They all sound exactly the same, but all that's missing there is, "I am Mole Man the First, Lord of the center of the earth." And then like call one of them a witless lackey and slap him around. The contempt that the supervillains have for their lackeys is really disturbing. I feel like that should be something that Taskmaster does as like community outreach kind of thing, is like, you have to sign a contract. He'll provide you with the muscle when you're a big supervillain, but you have to sign a contract saying that you won't verbally abuse your lackeys too much. And then like if Mole Man starts verbally abusing some of his lackeys that he got from, I know he didn't get these from like somewhere like that. These are subterranean people. But let's say Mole Man got some lackeys from Taskmaster, and then he just goes off and he's like, "You witless fools," and smacks them around. And they're like, "But sir, you have this contract. You signed it saying that you wouldn't treat us that way." "Ah, contracts are for fools and cretins." Tears it all up, And then the Taskmaster shows up and whips his butt. I love it. That's a whole other story. Anyway, so he's building a machine and he has a plan. And it will make him the undisputed master of the surface world, which I've never quite understood why he wants to be master of the surface world when he doesn't even like the surface world. He doesn't want to live there. He likes his underground world. Why not just, be content with your underground world? Why do you have to take over a place you don't like? I mean, there's places that I don't really like going, and I don't want to be in charge of them. I don't want to have anything to do with them. But anyway, so there's a Mole Man, and he survived that last Holocaust. That's nice. He's managed to rebuild his underground empire, and what he's going to do, it's an atomic gyroscope. Okay, so we're still reveling in the atomic stuff from back in the 30s and 40s. It's gonna make the speed of the Earth's rotation on its axis increase and spin faster and faster until ... until I stop it. All life on the surface will be destroyed, while we here at Earth Center will be safe. So, so he just wants to wipe out, like, at that time, probably what, 4 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion people, just because he doesn't like the surface world. So and the ants noticed it first. So he's already started doing it, which is why why the ants have given the alarm to Pym. But again, I'm trying to understand his plan. He's just going to speed up the Earth's rotation somehow until everybody on Earth is destroyed, and then they're going to still be there in their little center of the Earth. And okay, I guess there are other ways to destroy the Earth, but I guess this is the way, the surface world. And so now he doesn't want to rule the surface world. He just wants to kill it. This is very similar to, what is his name? Lindstrom, the villain in the James Bond movie, The Spy Who Loved Me from 1977. Remember, he wanted to cause a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union that would wipe out all the surface world, and then basically the underwater people would rule. Dang, it never really dawned on me until now how much The Spy Who Loved Me is basically a Submariner movie with James Bond as the Fantastic Four trying to stop Namor from destroying the surface world, for the underwater people to destroy the surface world. So yeah, so there's a lot of Namor to this, but instead of the underwater world, it's the underground world. But anyway, okay, well, do with that what you will. Oh, there's a great Jan in a huff. So Hank shrinks down to ant size and is trying to get Jan to go with him. And Jan says, "What do you mean we, handsome? I've got other plans. I'm due at the hairdresser in 15 minutes. Again, Jan is just not a fun character to read back then. I'm sure a big, strong Avenger like you doesn't need help to visit some ants. So they bicker a little bit. And now I got to pause here to talk about the Mary Marvel Marching Society. And yeah, the MMS wants you. They advertised the bejesus out of this thing everywhere for a while. People were cutting little. I think this is what's responsible for a lot of disfigured comics over the years. Is that people were cutting out the little panels that were drawn into the comics to put in their MMS books. I may be confusing this with something else, but it seems like this ended up with a lot of people cutting a lot of holes in their comics. By the way, I'm also looking forward to when we no longer have these giant continued after next page. I feel like they shrunk this down. It's only there because they felt like readers back then didn't have enough sense to understand the story wasn't over after page 4. Like kids are going to go, huh, that was a weird story. Nothing happened. Huh. And then they'll turn the page and be like, oh, here's a whole new story. Oh, it picks right up where the last one. Well, okay. Why do you need to tell me that? But anyway, but the thing about the Mary Marvel Marching Society ad is look at all that text. Good Lord. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 elements on this page. And most of them are packed dense with text. I mean, as a kid, I guess, because this comic came out before I was born, but I guess if you were, in the right age group when this came out, you'd stop your story reading in its tracks to spend 10, 15 minutes just puzzling over all this, right? I mean, it wouldn't take you that long to read it, but I mean, just to kind of read it through and read it again and kind of understand all the different things it's talking about. There's a lot going on that ad. That's a very busy page. You have to be a mighty Marvel madman, as it says right here, to do all that. So, all right. Moving on. So now Jan bugs out. You'll pardon the expression there. 2, and that just leaves Hank to do everything because he's the only one that's willing to go take a look at this. So he goes down the anthill and he encounters Mole Man. Must have been a heck of a, yeah, it says minutes later. Yeah, by cautiously letting himself down to the bottom while giant-sized. Okay, so he's gone from ant-sized to giant-sized to get down here faster. He's trying to break through. Mole Man sees him. They fight. The underground people fight. And I like this text right here, by the way. It's one of those things where I guess Don Heck drew the little subterranean people hitting Hank in the back with whatever this piece of metal is. And Stan couldn't just say, oh, they've ambushed me with a scrap metal piece. So it becomes keep attacking the enemy giant with your portable battering devices. Portable battering devices, really? A piece of metal or a battering ram, whatever, is a portable battering device. That sounds like something you'd have in a bakery, not. Anyway, I keep saying that. I'm sorry. It's just I keep getting distracted by these odd things in this story, and then I try to get refocused. So they fight. He's got his shield like he's Captain Giant America. He destroys a tank, but old Mole Man is not above shooting his enemy in the back, and he does. And they tie him up like Gulliver and carry him away. Meanwhile, the Earth is shaking. Seismographs everywhere going mad. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is leaning even more. Bridges are shaking, and the Avengers have to reconvene. Giant Man was right. We should have listened to him. We were so busy making with the wise cracks, it never occurred to us to ask what kind of danger the ants were warning us of. No, you're right, Iron Man. You weren't, because you weren't interested in what they were warning him. You were interested in that it was the ants warning him. So we do find out here that this week's acting chairperson is Jan. So that's cool. I'm excited that Jan gets to be the chair finally. So she uses the image projector that we saw back in issue number 3 to project herself down into Mole Man's realm and sees that he's still around. But he sees her too. And here's another interesting thing here. Alert the guard, says Mole Man. There is another at the gates. I sense that this one is a female. The Mole Man has senses that tell him if somebody's male or female? Or is it that he's looking at her and she's clearly a woman? So when you say, I sense this one's a female, what you're saying is she looks like a woman. I'll just go with that. Okay. So Mole Man orders the subterranean people to go attack the surface. And meanwhile, the Avengers use Tony Stark's underground tunneling type machine here. And they're going to go down, but they get attacked by the subterranean people. And there's a fight. And again, the fights are not that interesting to me. Yeah, just a various, okay. And they fight and yeah, okay. And then finally, the subterranean people escape in a mist and they are gone. And Rick Jones apparently shows up. I didn't see him there up until this moment. Maybe he was there. I'm not going to go back and look. I'm right with you, Cap. You heard the man, Rick. Let's go. Yeah. So they're going to Stark's West Side warehouse to bring those transistor tubes, I guess, for the machine. All right. So they encounter somebody stealing Stark's supplies, and we get a battle between Captain America and some criminals. And Cap takes a shot here from Monk. That would have knocked most people out, I think. And then Rick wades in and punches Monk and gets lifted up. And then Cap comes through and get this great shot. This is a really nice sequence here where Cap hits him and he goes down. And he's lecturing him the whole way down, right? It takes him like 2 minutes to fall down. And Cap's like, you didn't think your one blow could stop a man who spent his life learning how to roll with a punch, did you? And by the way, you could use a little of that learning yourself. Pay attention when someone talks to you. Oh, well, maybe I'll just write you a letter. I hate to lose my temper, but when I see someone threatening a kid. So Stan just kind of goes off here with Cap lecturing this. The dude's probably like pretending to be unconscious so he won't get any more lecture from Cap. He's just like, oh, yeah, Cap's punch was bad, but that lecture, man, I'm just going to pretend I'm, and I don't blame him. By the way, I've got to say, this book makes you the Daredevil King of the road racing set. I would have paid $25 for that book, not 25 cents, because I would love to be the Daredevil King of the road racing set. That sounds awesome to me. All right. Rick is all right. He just had the breath knocked out of him when Monk dropped him. Come on, little friend. Wake up. We got work to do. I guess I'll never have a chance to become an Avenger now, Cap? Nonsense, Rick. One setback will not affect your status. We've all had our share of defeats, lad. The important thing is to profit by them. Now, all right, let me unpack this for just a moment. What we've learned over the last several issues is that Rick Jones really wants to be an Avenger, but also that Rick Jones has no superpowers or any particular skills like Hawkeye or Black Widow. So Rick's claim to wanting to be an Avenger is that he knows the Hulk and Captain America and kind of looks like Bucky. That's it. That's why Rick thinks he should be an Avenger, is because he knows the Hulk and the Hulk exists because of him. And he looks kind of like Captain America's old partner that is allegedly at this point dead. So why? And the one thing, remember, that we saw. Wait, does Cap have a star on his back? I thought it was just on his front. Huh. One thing we saw a couple of issues ago, I think it was that the person that was the most against Rick being an Avenger was Cap. And now Cap's like, oh, no, son, don't get down. You still have a chance. Okay. All right. I don't know. All right, so the Avengers get together here, put the machine together. They fly out, they parachute down. I like that somebody asked the question, say, Cap, it must be Jan because his little lady. Say, Cap, who pays for that chartered jet, us or the Avengers Petty Cash Fund? We can discuss that at our next meeting, little lady. Well, it's good that Cap's got like bookkeeping issues in mind when they're going into battle to save the world from the Mole Man's machine. Okay, the Red Ghost shows up randomly because we needed to fill up more pages of this story. Again, I'm going to say this again toward the end, but I want to point out here, this story is very much just an action story, right? There's the characterization we get is that people don't believe Hank over the ant warning, and the Red Ghost and Mole Man get along like two Marvel villains always get along back then. This is the same kind of conversations you get with Baron Zemo and the people he teams up with. It's interesting how you always have like one established villain, and then another villain shows up and says, I'm here to team up with you because we can really kick butt when we team up together. And the first villain's like, well, you have to prove yourself to me first. And the second villain's like, all right, well, let me go do this. We'll kill the Avengers. We'll fight the Fantastic Four. We'll do whatever. And then they kind of team up, but they still look for a chance to backstab each other. And that just is like one of the most long, overused, but certainly many, many times used Marvel tropes. And the Red Ghost shows up with the exact same thing here. I admire your memory for remembering me. I'm a very unmemorable villain. I'm surprised you remember me. That's very nice. So basically, the Red Ghost just made himself intangible and just floated down through the earth until he got to Mole Man's realm. All right, well, here come the Avengers on their little machine. And hey, we don't get an Avengers Assemble. We get an Avengers Attack. So we're getting all sorts of different catchphrases in the first 12 issues. And they're trying to fight their way in. And more battle, Red Ghost. Oh, now this is cool. Iron Man pulls a gun out of the side of his chest unit. I missed that the first time I read it because I was fascinated by all this dialogue they cram into this panel where he's talking about, yeah, I'd rather kill the Fantastic Four first, but their turn will come soon. Which reminds me again of James Bond telling Goodnight in The Man with the Golden Gun, there now, Goodnight, your turn will come, your time will come. But he's talking about the Fantastic Four, and Iron Man says, Mister, if talking big paid off at the box office, you'd be a star. But in this league, it's what you do that counts. You know, I write comics, and I just got to tell you, if I have never in my life been motivated to put that much dialogue into one panel, much less a panel on a 9-panel. This is a 9-panel page. This is a 9-panel page. This panel right here, this one right here is less than an inch wide. It may be about an inch wide. So he's got a gun that comes out of his armor. That's just blows my mind. He uses sound, messes him up. Giant fly swatter. Iron Man, it looks painful, is holding it up. Power dive, Jan, as I've taught you now. So apparently Hank teaches Jan how to fly, even though Hank can't fly and Jan can fly. Okay. So then Jan turns off the machine that's holding him in, which looks a lot like the machine that's spinning the earth. Okay, now Hank gets out, starts attacking the subterranean guys, and they shoot missiles at Thor. He knocks them back through the Red Ghost. The Red Ghost has a new power apparently, which came in handy at this issue, which is that he can make other people intangible too. So he lets the blast of these rockets go through them. Iron Man goes bald momentarily here. His entire helmet is gold. You know what? You can't complain to anybody because they still are not listing the colorist. We don't know who the color artist is. That's so weird. They list the letterer. Well, I mean, I guess if you're lettering a Stan Lee written issue back then, you deserve whatever, because you're doing work. Sam Rosen is doing work here. He's doing work and has remarkably few. I don't come over hardly any typos considering how much he's having to letter. That's amazing. He doesn't probably get nearly enough credit. But we still know who the colorist is, but they missed coloring Iron Man's head there. All right, so Iron Man, Thor pull the rug up, literally. Wrap the subterranean guys in that. I hope they let them out so they don't all die. Your mighty efforts have been in vain. If I push the switch, I can destroy all life on the surface of the earth by increasing its axis speed. So he's still got his machine here. But meanwhile, Pym goes down to tiny, tiny size and sabotages the machine so it doesn't work. And so they beat feet. They take off, but they can't be caught because they're intangible or unsolid, as Thor says. So Thor smashes the machinery. And I did miss the point somewhere in here, I think, where Iron Man talks about having to recharge his... Oh, let me go back because it's just a couple of pages ago. Here it is. Are we nearly there, Thor? I'm getting tired of stopping so often to recharge my transistor. So in other words, when Iron Man flies somewhere long, and especially carrying something that big and heavy, he has to keep stopping to recharge his transistors. And is he stopping in places he can plug into somebody's electricity? Or is he stopping somewhere and just riding around in circles on his skates to charge up his batteries? Because that would be great. Can you imagine Iron Man flying over carrying some big device and all of a sudden he lands right in front of you and he sets it down and you're like, wow, you're Iron Man. He's like, not now, son. I have something important to do. And he just skates in a circle for 10 minutes. And then he picks up the machine and flies away. And you're like, what was that? So part of it is the villains are always in some remote location. This is like wherever they found it to get to the center of the earth. But, they had to keep going to South America to fight Zemo and everything. So they keep having to travel a long way. They need like a transporter or some kind. All right. So anyway, we were back over. We're to the end. Yeah. So this is the last page. I've always said the pacing issues in these early issues of Avengers always kind of bug me a little bit because you'd get to the, you're on the next to last page and the villains haven't even been defeated yet. They've just had the evil scheme has been thwarted on the second panel from the end of the next to last page. Think about that. The evil scheme of this issue gets thwarted with one panel left after it, and the villains are still there. We're going to have to do the whole grab the villains somehow, destroy their machine, beat them, win the battle, and get back home and have a little epilogue all in one page. I mean, man, that's just a lot, So in any case, all of you, Iron Man says, all of you follow Cap back through our escape route while I seal off these tunnels. If we're lucky, this will trap them all down here forever. I hope that, the red ghost, no, because he can just float right back up, allegedly, or apparently, right? He can just find a way to float back up to the surface. But I hope that the Mole Man has food down there if they keep sealing him off in the caves beneath the earth. We hate to leave without saying goodbye, Mole Man, but, and boom, they blow up the exit to his underground lair. The next day, back on the surface again. When High Pockets arrives, we'll have to give him a unanimous apology and a vote of thanks. Not a bad picture of me. It's funny. Mole Man is like the first villain the Avengers have fought so far that Jan didn't say, I bet he's really cute under that mole costume. She probably was about to and went, oh, Mole Man, I bet he's not bad looking under that. No, he's probably pretty bad looking. Yeah, he's probably pretty bad looking. Come to order, Wasp. We are waiting. So like Thor's all impatient. Dang it, woman! Who made you the chairperson of this team? You're reading the paper, reading your own press releases rather than bringing us to order. Oh, let her relax, pal. That little gal's earned it. So she's a little gal. All right. And finally, the entire villainous epilogue is crammed into one tiny little panel about 1.5 inches wide. Meanwhile, in the ruins of the Mole Man's once proud subterranean empire, we find, if not for your machine failing, we'd have won. A lot of help you were to me. You're just dead weight. So they're just bickering again. So you see, nobody's perfect, but if you're a true Marvel madman or woman, you knew that all the time, didn't you? The end. So, as I was alluding to a moment ago, this issue didn't really advance any plots or any characters very much. Again, the main character thing that I feel like comes out of this issue is that people are not taking Hank Pym seriously with the ant thing. I don't necessarily blame them, but that's my takeaway, is that they're just not taking him very seriously. Jan gets to be the chair. That's a development. Captain America apparently now doesn't have a problem with Rick Jones being a member of the Avengers. If only he had some reason to be. Okay. We still haven't seen Jarvis. And Thor's still not talking like Thor. But as David pointed out, it may be that Thor didn't talk like Thor in his own comic yet. I'm not really sure. And then Captain America, Iron Man. Iron Man remains the most boring member. I mean, Iron Man is my favorite character. You may notice behind me here on the shelf is one of my Iron Man statues. I have another one right in front of me. And of course, there's Iron Man over here. Oh, you know what? I was going to set up my new little banner for this show, and I forgot. Oh, well. I've got a Marvel superhero banner that's going to take up all this space up here at the top of the books. But anyway, yeah, so I don't feel like we got a whole lot of development in terms of the team, the characters. It was just kind of a throwaway action adventure story with the Avengers getting to fight Mole Man for a change instead of the Fantastic Four. And you got the Red Ghost a little bit too. So, yeah, not my favorite issue. It really was an action issue. It was some more of Stan's very clever. I mean, nobody could deny that Stan comes up with clever dialogue and clever action like that. Of course, the question remains, because I never heard Don Heck address this, but this is a very interesting question. So, in later years, Jack Kirby claimed that he wrote the Fantastic Four and Stan just did the dialogue. In other words, Jack was saying that he came up with the story and paced it all out, and then Stan came through and just put the dialogue in the bubbles, as opposed to Stan plotting it and then writing and then scripting it and writing the dialogue. If that's true, and I don't know. I respect Stan. I respect Jack. They're both giants, you know. I tend toward Jack more, but I'm not going to take anything away from Stan. I think his contributions are titanic. But I do wonder what Don Heck would have said. I'm assuming Don Heck is probably dead by now. I wonder what Don Heck would have said, though. Did Don Heck create these stories the way that Jack said he created the Fantastic Four stories? And then Stan does this dialogue. I really do wonder how much of this story and these issues is Don Heck. Is he being told, draw this, draw this, draw this, or is he figuring out what the story should be and then drawing it out, and then Stan comes through and just makes everybody sound the way he wants them to sound and say things? I don't know. And it's a good question. Now, I've got one more interesting little surprise for you before we wrap up here. I know this episode is running a little longer than usual for a one-issue solo, but again, I thought there were some interesting things to talk about, and there's one more thing here to talk about. I always like to look for celebrity letter writers who probably were not celebrities when they wrote letters to Marvel Comics. And I got a doozy for you this time, gang. Opposite the Marvel Masterpieces ad, we've got none other than George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones himself, Wild Cards himself. And George talks about how great Avengers #9 was. That was the Wonder Man first appearance. He talks about Don Heck being good and all that. But one thing he says that's interesting to me is, well, he says that the Thinker, the Puppet Master, Mole Man, and Diablo are probably 4 of the poorest villains you've ever introduced, which is funny because the Mole Man is one he mentions, and this whole issue is about the Mole Man. He does like the Red Ghost, though, so maybe that counterbalances it. But I like one other thing that George R.R. Martin says. This is a guy who's considered one of the greatest fantasy writers in history, right? I mean, he's sold more books than anybody almost, other than maybe Tolkien. And what does he say? It is true that all 4 starred in some of your great tales. This is due entirely to Stan's marvelous writing skill, which can provide good stories even with poor villains. So George R.R. Martin, way back in 1964, was praising Stan Lee's marvelous writing skill. That's pretty cool. I wonder if Stan knew about that a few years ago when George R.R. Martin got so big and famous. If Stan knew to go back, and I doubt it, you know. I wonder if somebody came up to Stan and said, Stan, you know George R.R. Martin? Oh, yeah, the Game of Thrones guy, sure. He described your writing as marvelous, your writing skill. Whoa, that's pretty cool, isn't it? All right. And then page 2 is just, there's nothing particularly interesting here that I saw other than under the special announcements, which is going to become bullpen bulletins later, I think. Naturally, our first question is, how do you like old Moley and the Red Ghost as a team? Bet that's one combo you never expected to see. No, I didn't ever expect to see it, and I hope to never see it again, because they're both sort of interesting on their own, but when you put them together and just have them doing the whole dolt, you know, you've ruined my plans, dolt, that kind of thing. I mean, no. So, all right. I think that's going to do it for this issue. We can go all the way to the end. Strange Tales has the thing. Interesting. Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, Sergeant Fury and Howling Commandos had their own title when Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Giant Man didn't. Wow. We still got the Yubawaza. We're going to keep an eye on this, gang. We're going to keep an eye on Yubawaza and see how long it hangs around. And then learn radio, television, electronics. Cool. Or hypnotize people. All right. Well, that has been Avengers number 12, This Hostage Earth. I hope you enjoyed this episode and this issue. Join me in a couple of weeks or so, if not sooner, and we'll look at Avengers 13. Let's get a sneak preview of that one really quickly. Avengers 13 will be... Uh-oh, where did it go? There it is. Oh, Count Nefaria. The first time the Avengers encounter Count Nefaria, but not the last. Not the last. And little does Iron Man know what is in store for him in the future at the hands of Count Nefaria and Count Nefaria's offspring, shall we say. All right, gang, I'll let you all go. Go to www.avengersassemble.net and join up to become a patron and get your name called out and to get special access to episodes nobody else sees. And otherwise, I'll bid you adieu and see you in the next video.